My sister discovered she was adopted and panicked, so she hired a fake birth mother off Craigslist to convince me I was the adopted one instead, because she wanted me to move out so our parents would never have to tell her the truth, but I already knew she was adopted all along and caught her red-handed. I'm 23F and my sister Nina is 26F. We've lived with our parents our whole lives. Nina just finished her accounting degree last year and got a job at a mid-size firm downtown. I'm still in college doing my economics major. Growing up, Nina and I had the usual sister relationship. We shared a bathroom, which led to constant fights about hair products left on the counter. She used to help me with my math homework because numbers came easier to her. I helped her figure out social media whenever she got confused about some new app. We watched reality shows together on weekends and made fun of the contestants. Nothing special or dramatic. Just normal. Our parents run a small printing business. Dad handles the machines and production while Mom manages clients and billing. They've had the shop for 20 years now. Nina worked there during high school and college before getting her accounting job. I worked there too during summers, mostly doing deliveries and organizing files. The house we live in is a 3-bedroom ranch-style place. Nina and I each have our own rooms. The walls are thin so we could always hear each other's music or phone conversations. Our parents' room is on the other side of the house near the kitchen. 3 months ago I had a Tuesday morning class cancelled. I drove home because I left my calculator on my desk and needed it for an afternoon exam. When I pulled into the driveway, both my parents' cars were there, which was unusual for a Tuesday at 10 a.m. The shop is usually open by then. I walked in through the front door. The house was quiet. I started heading toward my room when I heard voices coming from the den. The door was mostly closed but not completely. My dad was talking in a low voice. I stopped in the hallway. My mom said something about paperwork being at the storage unit on Industrial Drive. Then my dad said they needed to make sure Nina never went looking through those boxes. My mom agreed and said they should have gotten rid of everything years ago, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. My dad then said that with Nina's accounting background and her tendency to be thorough with details, she might start asking questions someday. My mom said maybe they should just tell her. My dad said no, not yet, maybe after she gets more settled in her career. Then my mom said the exact words I still remember. She said they made the right choice not telling her she was adopted and they should keep it that way. I stood there in the hallway for maybe 30 seconds. My hands went cold. I could hear my own breathing. I turned around and walked back out the front door as quietly as possible. I got in my car and drove back to campus. I never got the calculator. For the next 2 weeks I watched Nina differently. I looked at her face next to our parents' faces at dinner. She has dark brown hair while Mom and I have lighter brown hair. Her nose is wider than either of our parents' noses. Her height is about 5 inches shorter than Dad's, but I'm short too, so that didn't mean anything. I started thinking about family photos. Nina as a baby looked different from me as a baby, but all babies look weird, so that proved nothing. I remembered Mom had a pregnancy photo from when she was expecting me, but I couldn't remember ever seeing one from when she was expecting Nina. That might have meant something or it might have meant nothing. Nina and I still acted normal around each other. She complained about her coworker who always microwaved fish in the office kitchen. I told her about my professor who gave pop quizzes every week. We watched our reality show together like always. But I kept thinking about what I heard. I didn't tell Nina. I didn't tell anyone. I just kept going to class and coming home and acting like everything was normal. Then 4 weeks after I heard that conversation, Nina knocked on my door one evening. I was at my desk working on an assignment. She came in and sat on my bed with her laptop. She had this look on her face like she was trying to seem casual, but something was off. She said she needed to talk to me about something important. I closed my textbook and turned my chair around. She said she'd been doing some research for a work project that involved looking through old county records. She said she accidentally came across something about our family. She opened her laptop and showed me a document. It looked like a birth certificate, but some of the information was blacked out. She said she found it in a public records database while searching for something else. She pointed to a name on the document. The name was mine. She said according to this document, I was adopted when I was 3 days old. She said our parents' names weren't listed as the birth parents but as the adoptive parents. She said there was another woman's name listed as the biological mother. The name was Paula Lakeland. I looked at the document on her screen. It had official-looking stamps and seals. The dates matched my birthday. My name was on it spelled correctly. Nina then said she did more searching and found this Paula Lakeland woman. She said Paula had been trying to find me for years. She said Paula wanted to meet me. She said Paula had information about my biological father and my medical history that might be important. I asked Nina how she found all this. She said it was complicated, but she had access to databases through her accounting firm's legal department. She said she verified everything multiple times. She said she wanted to tell me in person before I found out some other way. I sat there looking at the document. Nina kept talking. She said Paula seemed like a nice person based on her online presence. She said Paula had a steady job as a nurse. She said Paula never married and never had other children. She said Paula specifically mentioned she could help pay for my graduate school if I wanted to continue my education. That last part made me pause. I asked Nina why Paula would offer to pay for graduate school. Nina said Paula felt guilty about giving me up and wanted to make up for it now. She said Paula had been saving money for years hoping to find me. I told Nina I needed time to think about all this. She said of course and that she just wanted me to know the truth. She said she would help me contact Paula whenever I was ready. She closed her laptop and left my room. I sat at my desk for a long time that night. The whole thing felt strange. The timing felt strange. The way Nina presented it felt strange. The graduate school money felt especially strange. The next day I skipped my morning class and drove to the county records office downtown. I waited in line for 20 minutes. When I got to the counter I asked the clerk how I could access my own birth records. She asked for my ID and date of birth. She typed into her computer for a minute then printed out a document. The document showed my birth certificate. It listed my parents' names as the birth parents. No adoption notation. No other names. Just a regular birth certificate. I asked the clerk if there was any way this could be wrong. She said birth certificates don't usually have errors and if there was an adoption it would be listed in a different type of record that I could request but would take longer to process. I thanked her and left. I drove to my parents' printing shop. They were both there working on a large order. I asked if I could talk to them in the office. We went into the small back office and I closed the door. I told them everything. I told them about overhearing their conversation 6 weeks ago. I told them about Nina's document and her story about Paula Lakeland. I told them about the birth certificate I just got from the county records office. My mom's face went white. My dad put his hand on the desk like he needed to steady himself. Neither of them said anything for what felt like a full minute. Then my dad asked if I told Nina that I knew she was the adopted one. I said no. My mom asked if I confronted Nina about the fake document. I said no. My dad sat down in his desk chair. He said they had been planning to tell Nina after she got more established in her career. He said they thought maybe in another year or two. He said they never expected this to happen. My mom said Nina had asked them a few strange questions over the past month. Questions about baby photos and pregnancy complications and things like that. She said they thought Nina was just curious about general family history. I asked them who Paula Lakeland was. My dad said he had no idea. He said the name meant nothing to him. My mom said the same thing. I asked them about the adoption details. My mom said they adopted Nina when she was 5 days old through a private adoption agency. She said Nina's biological mother was a teenager who wasn't ready to be a parent. She said they had letters from the biological mother for the first few years but then the correspondence stopped. She said all the paperwork was in a box at a storage unit they rented. My dad said they kept meaning to tell Nina but the right time never came. First she was too young, then she was in high school and stressed about college applications, then she was in college and stressed about grades, then she was job hunting, and now she was adjusting to her new career. My mom started crying. She said they did everything wrong. My dad said they should have told Nina years ago. I asked them what I should do about Nina's meeting with this Paula person. Because Nina had texted me that morning saying Paula wanted to meet me at a coffee shop downtown on Saturday at 2 p.m. My mom said I should go to the meeting and see who this person really was. My dad agreed. He said we needed to find out what Nina was trying to do. Update 1: I went to the coffee shop that Saturday. It's called Brewpoint and it's in the main downtown area near the courthouse. I got there 15 minutes early and sat at a table in the corner where I could see the door. Nina showed up at exactly 2 p.m. She was wearing nice clothes like she was going to an interview. She saw me and waved. Then a woman walked in right behind her. The woman was maybe 50 years old with blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. She wore scrubs like she just came from a hospital shift. They walked over to my table together. Nina introduced the woman as Paula. Paula smiled and reached out to shake my hand. I shook it. We all sat down. Paula started talking immediately. She said she was so happy to finally meet me. She said she thought about me every day since she gave me up. She said she was 17 when she got pregnant and her parents forced her to give the baby up for adoption. I let her talk for about 5 minutes. She had a whole story prepared. Details about the hospital where I was supposedly born. Details about what she was wearing that day. Details about how she held me for 10 minutes before the nurses took me away. Then I interrupted her. I asked her what her job was. She looked confused by the question. She said she was a nurse at County General. I asked her what department. She said emergency room. I pulled out my phone. I had looked up County General's employee directory that morning. I asked her what her employee ID number was. She stammered. She said she didn't have it memorized. I said that was fine and I would just call the hospital to verify. She looked at Nina. Nina looked at the table. Neither of them said anything. I told Paula I knew she wasn't a nurse. I told her I knew she wasn't my biological mother. I told her I knew this whole thing was fake. Paula stood up. She said she was sorry. She said she needed the money. Then she walked out of the coffee shop. Nina sat there frozen. I asked her how much she paid Paula to do this. Nina didn't answer. I asked again. Nina said $1,000. $500 up front and $500 after the meeting. I asked her why. She didn't answer. I asked her where she found Paula. She said Craigslist. She posted an ad looking for someone to play a part and Paula responded. I asked her again why she did this. Nina finally looked at me. She said she found out she was adopted 2 months ago. She said she was going through old boxes in the garage looking for her birth certificate to update her passport. She said she found adoption papers with her name on them. She said she panicked. She said she didn't know how to deal with it. She said she couldn't stop thinking about it. She said she felt like everything about her life was a lie. Then she said something that made no sense. She said she thought if she could convince me that I was adopted instead, then I might leave home to live with my biological mother. She said if I moved out, then our parents might forget about the whole adoption thing entirely. She said she thought she could make the problem go away. I asked her how that logic made any sense. She said she knew it sounded crazy but she wasn't thinking straight. She said she just wanted things to go back to normal. I told her I knew about the adoption before she tried to trick me. I told her I overheard Mom and Dad talking about it 2 months ago. I told her I went to the county records office and confirmed my own birth certificate was real. Nina's face did something strange. She got very still. Then she asked why I didn't tell her if I knew. I said I didn't know how to bring it up. She said I should have told her. I said maybe she should have asked Mom and Dad directly instead of hiring someone off Craigslist. We sat there not talking for a few minutes. Other people in the coffee shop were looking at us. Nina's face was red and she kept pulling at her sleeve. Finally I asked her how she thought this plan would actually work. She said Paula was supposed to tell me about all the opportunities waiting for me if I reconnected with my real family. She said Paula was supposed to make it sound exciting to move away and start fresh somewhere new. She said she thought I might actually go for it. I asked if she really thought I would abandon our parents and move in with a stranger just because someone claimed to be my biological mother. She said she didn't know what she thought. She said she was desperate. I left the coffee shop. Nina stayed sitting at the table. I drove home. When I got there, I told our parents everything that happened. They sat on the couch and listened without interrupting. After I finished, Dad said they needed to talk to Nina. Mom said they should have had this conversation years ago. Dad said a lot of things they should have done differently. Nina came home an hour later. I heard her car in the driveway. She came in through the front door and went straight to her room. She didn't come out for the rest of the day. The next morning Mom and Dad knocked on Nina's door. I could hear them talking through the walls but couldn't make out the words. The conversation lasted about an hour. When they came out, Mom's eyes were red. For the next week, Nina barely left her room except to go to work. She stopped watching TV with me. She stopped joining us for dinner most nights. When she was home, she kept her door closed. I heard her on the phone a few times. Once she was talking to someone about sealed adoption records. Another time she was asking someone about biological family search services. She seemed to be researching everything about adoption laws and birth parent rights. One night around 11 p.m. I heard something that sounded like crying from her room. I stood outside her door trying to decide if I should knock. I didn't. I went back to my room. Update: 2 things at home stayed tense. Nina and I stopped talking much. She went to work, came home, and stayed in her room. On weekends she started going out by herself. She didn't say where. Our parents tried to act normal but meals were quiet and awkward. Dad focused on his food. Mom tried to make conversation about neutral topics like the weather or neighborhood news. Nina responded with one-word answers. I mostly stayed quiet. One Saturday morning I woke up to voices in the kitchen. It sounded like an argument. I got dressed and went downstairs. Nina was standing at the kitchen counter with papers spread out everywhere. Mom and Dad were standing on the other side looking at the papers. Nina was pointing at different documents and talking fast. The papers were printouts from websites about adoption records and birth parent registries. There were also request forms for unsealing adoption records and contact permission forms for adoption agencies. Nina had been researching for weeks apparently. She found the name of the adoption agency that handled her adoption. She found out the agency still existed under a different name. She sent them requests for information. They sent back forms that needed to be filled out. She filled them out and sent them back. This had been going on for over a month. Dad was saying they would tell her everything she wanted to know about the adoption. Nina said that wasn't good enough. She said she wanted the official records. She said she wanted her biological mother's name. She said she had a right to know her medical history. Mom was crying. She kept saying they were her real parents regardless of biology. Nina said she knew that, but she still needed answers. Dad said they were planning to tell her all this after she settled into her job. Nina said that wasn't their choice to make. The argument went in circles. Nina accused them of lying for 26 years. Dad said they didn't lie, they just waited for the right time. Nina said there was no right time, they should have told her when she was old enough to understand. Mom said they were trying to protect her. Then Nina said something that changed the whole conversation. She said the real reason she tried to trick me with the fake adoption story wasn't just about making me leave. She said it was because she always felt like I was closer to Mom and Dad. She said she always felt like the outsider even before she knew she was adopted. She said she thought if I left, maybe she could finally feel like she really belonged in the family. Mom stopped crying. Dad just stared at Nina. I stood in the doorway not knowing what to say. Nina continued. She said she noticed little things growing up. She said Mom and I had similar interests and could talk for hours about books and movies. She said Dad and I had the same sense of humor. She said family friends always commented on how I looked like Mom. She said nobody ever said she looked like anyone. She said when she found the adoption papers, everything clicked. She said it explained why she always felt different. She said it explained why she felt like she had to work harder to get the same attention. Dad said that wasn't true. He said they loved both of us equally. Nina said she believed they loved her but it wasn't the same. She said there was always a difference even if they didn't mean for there to be one. Mom tried to hug Nina but Nina stepped back. She said she wasn't angry anymore. She said she just needed to know the truth about where she came from. She said she needed to understand her full story before she could move forward. Dad finally agreed to tell her everything. He went to the garage and came back with a cardboard box. Inside were papers from the adoption, letters from Nina's biological mother, and photos. We all sat down at the kitchen table. Dad spread out the documents. He explained that Nina's biological mother was named Claire. She was 16 when she got pregnant. Her parents found an adoption agency and made all the arrangements. Claire wrote letters to our parents for the first 3 years. The letters were in the box. She sent photos of herself so Nina could see what she looked like. She asked our parents to send photos of Nina back, which they did. Then the letters stopped. Our parents tried to contact the agency but Claire had moved and left no forwarding information. Nina read through every letter. Some of them were long. Claire wrote about hoping Nina was happy. She wrote about thinking about her every birthday. She wrote about wondering what kind of person Nina would become. The photo showed a teenage girl with dark hair and a wide nose. She looked like Nina. The resemblance was obvious once you saw them side by side. Nina asked if our parents ever tried to find Claire after the letters stopped. Dad said they contacted the agency a few times over the years but Claire never updated her information with them. Mom said they assumed Claire wanted to move on with her life. Nina asked if they knew anything else about Claire's family or where she might be now. Dad said no. He said the adoption agency might have more information but they would need Claire's permission to share it. Nina took all the papers and photos to her room. She spent the whole rest of the day in there. I could hear her moving around but she didn't come out even for dinner. The next morning Nina came into my room before I was fully awake. She sat on the edge of my bed and apologized. She said she was sorry for trying to trick me with the fake adoption story. She said she was sorry for paying someone to pretend to be my mother. She said she knew it was wrong and she wasn't thinking clearly. I told her I understood she was going through something difficult. She said that didn't excuse what she did. She said she tried to manipulate me into leaving home because she was jealous. She said that was unforgivable. I didn't know what to say to that. She was right that it was wrong. But I also understood why she did it. She was dealing with finding out her entire identity was based on something she didn't know. Nina said she was going to try to find Claire. She said she submitted her DNA to several ancestry websites. She said she joined online groups for adopted people searching for birth parents. She said she wasn't going to stop until she found answers. Update 3: Nina found Claire 3 months after that conversation. It happened through one of the DNA websites. A second cousin match led to more matches and eventually Nina figured out Claire's current name and location. Claire lives 2 states away. She's married now with 2 teenage kids. Nina contacted her through Facebook. Claire responded the same day. They talked on the phone for 3 hours. Nina told me some of what they discussed. Claire said she never stopped thinking about Nina but her parents made her promise never to contact the adoptive family. She said when she turned 18 she wanted to reach out but didn't know how. She said she was afraid our parents wouldn't want her interfering in Nina's life. Claire said she would like to meet Nina in person. Nina agreed. They set up a meeting for the following month. Nina asked if I wanted to come with her. I said yes. Our parents didn't want her going alone anyway. We drove 6 hours to a town I'd never heard of. We met Claire at a restaurant near her house. She brought her husband but not her kids. She thought that might be too overwhelming for a first meeting. Claire looked exactly like the photos from 26 years ago except older. Same dark hair, same nose, same smile. She and Nina could have been mistaken for mother and daughter by anyone who saw them. The meeting lasted about 4 hours. They talked about everything. Claire explained her situation when she got pregnant. She said the father was a boy from school who moved away before she even knew she was pregnant. She said her parents handled everything and she didn't have any say in the decision. Claire said giving Nina up was the hardest thing she ever did. She said she thought about Nina every single day. She said she hoped Nina had a good life with parents who loved her. Nina showed her photos of our family. Claire looked at every single one carefully. She asked questions about Nina's childhood and school and hobbies. She seemed genuinely interested in every detail. By the end of the meeting, they exchanged phone numbers and agreed to stay in touch. Claire said Nina was welcome to visit any time. Nina said she would like that. On the drive home, Nina was quiet for the first hour. Then she started talking. She said she felt relieved to finally have answers. She said Claire seemed like a good person who was put in an impossible situation. She said meeting Claire didn't change her feelings about our parents, but it filled in missing pieces. When we got home, Nina told our parents everything about the meeting. They listened without interrupting. When she finished, Mom asked if Nina was planning to keep seeing Claire. Nina said yes. Dad asked if Nina still felt like the outsider in the family. Nina said sometimes, but not as much as before. Things are different now. Nina talks to Claire on the phone every couple of weeks. She's planning to visit again next month. Our parents seem okay with it, though Mom gets quiet whenever Claire's name comes up. Nina and I are slowly getting back to normal. We watched our reality show together last week for the first time in months. She still helps me with math and I still help her with technology. But there's a distance now that wasn't there before. She hasn't apologized to our parents for the fake adoption scheme. I don't think she ever will. In her mind, their decision to hide the truth for 26 years was worse than her decision to try to trick me for a few weeks. I disagree, but I don't argue with her about it. We've all had enough arguments. Our parents haven't asked me how I feel about any of this. I think they're afraid of what I might say. The truth is I don't know how I feel. Nina tried to manipulate me into abandoning my family because she was jealous. That's not something that just goes away. But she's still my sister. We grew up in the same house, shared the same bathroom, fought over the same remote control. That doesn't disappear either. I'm back at school now finishing my last year. Nina still works at the same accounting firm. Our parents still run their printing business. On the surface everything looks the same as it did 6 months ago. But we all know it's not the same. The secrets are out now. We can't put them back. We just have to figure out how to live with what we know. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. After 8 years of marriage, my wife cheated while I was grieving. When I caught her, she said, "I deserve to be happy too." 2 years later I found someone who understands loss. I never thought I'd be sitting here writing this. 2 weeks ago, I found out my wife was having an affair. I'm still trying to process everything that's happened, but I need to get this off my chest. I met Karen, 30F, during our sophomore year in college. I, 32M, was at this house party that my roommate dragged me to. I was standing in the corner, nursing a beer, when Karen walked in. She immediately commanded everyone's attention with her laugh and confident presence. She was studying finance while I was in mechanical engineering. We started talking when she accidentally bumped into me and spilled her drink. Instead of getting upset, she made a joke about how the universe was forcing her to meet new people. Our first date was at this Italian restaurant downtown. I forgot my wallet at home and had to run back to get it, making us miss our reservation. Then when we finally got seated at a different place, I knocked over a glass of red wine that splashed all over her white blouse. I was mortified, but Karen just looked down at the stain, shrugged, and said it looked artistic. We ended up walking around the city for hours that night, talking about everything from our childhood dreams to our favorite breakfast cereals. That night, I knew Karen was different from anyone I'd ever met. Karen came from a working-class family. Her dad worked at a factory and her mom was a receptionist at a dentist's office. She was the first in her family to go to college, and she was determined to make something of herself. She worked part-time at the campus bookstore, maintained a near-perfect GPA, and still found time for her internships. Her drive and ambition were incredible. Karen pushed me to apply for leadership positions in our engineering club and encouraged me to go for competitive internships I didn't think I could get. When I landed an internship at a prestigious engineering firm, largely because of her help with my resume and interview prep, she was more excited than I was. After graduation, Karen got a job at a consulting firm, and I started working at an engineering company. We both did well in our careers and moved in together after dating for about a year. 6 months later, I proposed during a weekend trip to the mountains. We kept our wedding small, just close friends and family. The look on Karen's face as she walked toward me is something I'll never forget. The first few years of our marriage were incredible. We both advanced in our careers, allowing us to travel and enjoy life in the city. We had a great group of friends and hosted dinner parties regularly. Karen and I rarely argued, and when we did, we always made sure to listen to each other and find a middle ground. One thing I loved about our relationship was that we maintained our independence. Karen had her yoga classes and painting groups, while I played basketball with friends and tinkered with old cars on weekends. We supported each other's interests and gave each other space when needed. Everything was perfect until my older brother Eric got diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. Eric wasn't just my brother, he was my best friend, my confidant, my role model. Growing up, he taught me to ride a bike, helped me with homework, and gave me advice about everything from school to girls. When our parents divorced during my high school years, Eric checked in on me every day and came home from college on weekends just to make sure I was okay. He was the one who encouraged me to apply to college and helped me move into my dorm. At our wedding, his best man speech had everyone both laughing and crying. The diagnosis was a complete shock. Eric had always been healthy, he ran marathons, ate well, never smoked. I can still remember sitting in that doctor's office with him and his wife Rebecca, feeling like the world was crumbling around me. I spent as much time as possible with Eric. I drove him to chemotherapy sessions, stayed with him during hospital stays, and tried my best to keep his spirits up. Karen was supportive at first. She often came with me to visit Eric and helped Rebecca with meals and housework. But as weeks turned into months, Karen started complaining. She said I was spending too much time with Eric and neglecting our relationship. I tried explaining how important it was for me to be there for my brother, but she seemed to resent the time I spent away from her. We started arguing more and more, usually about my schedule or her feeling neglected. I was under so much stress trying to balance my dying brother's needs with Karen's demands for attention. It felt like I couldn't win no matter what I did. Despite aggressive treatment, Eric passed away 8 months after his diagnosis. I completely fell apart. I couldn't imagine a world without my brother. I took a leave of absence from work and spent most days at home, often unable to get out of bed. Everything reminded me of Eric, and the pain was overwhelming. Karen tried to be supportive at first, but her patience wore thin quickly. She started pressuring me to move on and get back to our normal social life. She planned outings or invited friends over, but I just couldn't face it. Karen took my inability to socialize personally and accused me of pushing her away. This went on for about 3 months. I know it wasn't easy for Karen, but I was actively seeking help. I started seeing a grief counselor and was trying to process my loss. Still, Karen became increasingly distant and irritable. Then came the phone call that changed everything. Eric's best friend, Jack, called me 2 weeks ago. Jack was like another brother to me, and I could tell from his voice that something was wrong. He hesitated, then said he saw Karen at a hotel with another man. I didn't believe him at first. Karen and I had always been honest with each other. I trusted her completely. Then Jack sent me a photo. There was Karen, in a passionate embrace with a man I didn't recognize, about to enter a hotel room. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I sat in silence for hours, staring at that photo, wondering how the woman I loved could do this to me, especially while I was grieving. When Karen came home that evening, I showed her the photo. She tried to deny it at first, claiming it wasn't what it looked like. But when I pressed her, she broke down crying and admitted she'd been having an affair with a coworker for the past 2 months. Her excuses made me sick. She said she felt lonely and neglected. She said her needs weren't being met. She said she deserved to be happy. Then she had the audacity to suggest that I drove her to cheat by being emotionally unavailable. I was furious and heartbroken. I told Karen to get out and that I wanted a divorce. She begged me to reconsider, crying and pleading that it was a mistake and she still loved me. But I knew I could never trust her again. The next day, Karen called and texted repeatedly, saying I was being unfair and overreacting. She kept insisting that I had emotionally abandoned her, first with Eric and then with my grief, and that I had essentially pushed her to cheat. I'm at a complete loss. How could the woman I loved for 8 years betray me so profoundly? How could she try to blame me for her actions? Am I crazy for refusing to even consider reconciliation? I've been replaying our relationship in my head, wondering if I missed signs of selfishness in Karen or if Eric's illness somehow changed her. Sometimes I feel angry at myself for not seeing this coming. I wonder if I could have balanced my time better. But then I remind myself that a loving partner would have understood and supported me through the hardest time in my life. I haven't told many people yet. I feel embarrassed, and I don't want to deal with their reactions. I know I'll need support going through the divorce process, especially while I'm still grieving Eric. The thought of divorce while still dealing with Eric's loss feels overwhelming, but I can't imagine staying with Karen after what she did. I just don't know how to move forward from here. For those wondering about additional details, Karen knew how close Eric and I were and seemed to like him. She was at the hospital when he passed away. I never completely shut Karen out during my grieving. We still lived together and had meals together, but I wasn't up for socializing or intimacy. I recently discovered the affair had been going on for 4 months, not 2 as Karen claimed, which means it started shortly after Eric died. There were no major issues in our relationship before this. Karen only started expressing feelings of neglect after Eric got sick. I'm lost and don't know what to do next. Update 1. It's been 2 months since I discovered Karen's affair, and a lot has happened. I filed for divorce shortly after my last post. I knew there was no way I could trust Karen again, and without trust, there's no relationship. Karen's reaction has been a mix of anger and desperate pleading. She calls and texts constantly, alternating between apologizing profusely and ranting about how I'm making a mistake. Last week, she showed up at my office, crying and begging me to reconsider. My coworkers watched as she created a scene in the lobby. Security had to escort her out. I blocked her number after that incident for my own sanity. Karen moved in with her parents, while I stayed in our house. Being here is hard. Everything reminds me of our life together and of her betrayal. I've thought about selling the place, but the idea of another major change right now seems overwhelming. Through mutual friends, I've heard that Karen is spreading lies about me. She's telling people that I mentally abused her by abandoning her emotionally and refusing to work on our marriage, which forced her to seek comfort elsewhere. This infuriates me because it's so far from the truth. Some of our mutual friends have taken sides. Most support me, but a few believe Karen's version of events. I've lost friendships over this, which adds another layer of pain to an already difficult situation. I'm trying to focus on the friends who have stood by me. The divorce proceedings are a mess. Karen is attempting to claim half of everything, including the money I inherited from Eric. My lawyer assures me she has no legal right to the inheritance, but Karen is dragging out the process. It feels like a slap in the face that she's trying to profit from Eric's death. Dealing with depression and trust issues has been challenging. I've lost weight due to lack of appetite, and my performance at work has suffered. Fortunately, my boss has been understanding about the situation. About a month ago, I ran into Natalie, an old high school friend, at a coffee shop. We hadn't seen each other in years. Natalie lost her father to cancer last year, so she understands the grief I'm experiencing over Eric. We started hanging out as friends. She's a good listener and doesn't push me to talk about Karen if I don't want to. Natalie and I were on the debate team together in high school, and we both love classic movies. She's introduced me to new music and podcasts that have been a welcome distraction. It's nice to have someone to talk to who doesn't expect anything from me. When Karen found out about my friendship with Natalie, she flipped out. She showed up at my house unannounced, screaming that I was a hypocrite for moving on so quickly and accusing me of having an affair with Natalie, which isn't true. I had to threaten to call the police before she would leave. I've been focusing on honoring Eric's memory. I made a donation to the cancer center where he received treatment, and I've started volunteering there once a week. Eric's wife Rebecca and their children have been a great source of support. We have dinner together often, and it helps to talk about Eric with people who loved him as much as I did. There are still moments when I miss Karen and our life together. But then I remind myself of her betrayal and her behavior since then, and I know I'm making the right decision. The thought of dating again terrifies me, and I'm not ready for that yet. For now, I'm focused on rebuilding my life and healing from everything that's happened. Update 2. It's been 8 months since my last update, and a lot has changed. The divorce is finally finalized after a contentious process. We ended up splitting our assets 50-50, and Karen got nothing from Eric's inheritance. The day after the papers were signed, Karen showed up at my office again. She was crying, begging me to reconsider, claiming she made a terrible mistake. I calmly but firmly told her it was over and asked her to leave. She refused and caused another scene. Security had to escort her out again. I was so humiliated that I took the rest of the day off. My boss called me into his office before I left and shared that he went through a messy divorce years ago. He offered me time off if I needed it, which I appreciated. My friendship with Natalie has developed into something more. We've been officially dating for about 2 months now. Natalie is kind, understanding, and patient with my trust issues. She encourages me to talk about Eric and doesn't make me feel bad when I need to process my grief. We're taking things slow. We cook dinner together, go for walks, and binge watch shows. Natalie has helped me rediscover old hobbies, like playing guitar and photography, that I had neglected during my marriage. I've been focusing on myself more. I joined a gym, started learning guitar again, and have been traveling more. I took a solo trip to the mountains last month, something Karen was never interested in, and found it refreshing. Karen continues to badmouth me to anyone who will listen. She tells people I'm cold and unfeeling, that I never loved her, and even claims I was having an affair with Natalie before our divorce. I try not to engage with these rumors. I've been spending more time with Eric's family. Rebecca and the kids come over for dinner every Sunday, and we share stories about Eric. It's become a tradition that all of us look forward to. Eric's birthday was a tough day. Natalie suggested we find a way to honor him. We organized a small charity run in Eric's name, with proceeds going to cancer research. Many of our friends and family participated, and it felt good to do something positive on a day that could have been very difficult. I'm in a much better place than I was a year ago. The loss of Eric still hurts, but the pain isn't as raw as it once was. I'm cautiously optimistic about my future with Natalie. I'm proud of myself for standing my ground with Karen despite her persistent attempts to get back together. There are still tough days when I get angry about Karen's betrayal or miss the future we had planned. But I'm learning to manage these feelings and move forward with my life. Update 3. It's been a year since my last update, and life has settled into a new normal. Natalie and I are still together and going strong. We recently moved in together and adopted a dog, a golden retriever named Max. Natalie continues to be an incredible support. She's patient when I have moments of doubt and reassuring when my trust issues surface. Our relationship isn't perfect, we have disagreements like any couple, but we communicate openly and respect each other enough to work through challenges together. A few months ago, I ran into Karen at a mutual friend's wedding. It was awkward but civil. Karen apologized again for her behavior during the divorce and mentioned she's been seeing a therapist. I wished her well but made it clear that I'm not interested in any kind of relationship, even friendship. Seeing her brought up mixed emotions, some anger resurfaced, but I also felt a sense of closure. I realized how much I've grown and healed since everything happened. Grief for Eric still comes in waves, especially around significant dates like his birthday or the anniversary of his passing. But I've found healthy ways to cope and honor his memory. I continue to volunteer at the cancer center and remain close with Rebecca and the kids. Eric's oldest son, who's now 14, has been struggling lately. He's been acting out at school and having anger issues, which Rebecca attributes to the loss of his father. I've been spending more time with him, taking him to basketball games, working on his jump shot, talking about life. I'm trying to be the supportive figure that Eric was for me growing up. Natalie and I have discussed our future. We're not rushing into marriage, but we see this as a long-term relationship. We've talked about having kids someday, something I never thought I'd want again after what happened with Karen. The idea scares me, but with Natalie, I feel safe enough to consider it. Work has been going well. I received a promotion 6 months ago that's both exciting and challenging. It requires more travel, but Natalie and I are finding ways to balance our time together in our individual pursuits. I've reconnected with old hobbies and even joined an amateur baseball league. Natalie comes to my games and cheers louder than anyone else. Looking back, I now see how toxic my relationship with Karen had become even before the cheating. We had grown apart, though I didn't recognize it at the time. I don't excuse her affair, but I've made peace with what happened and am focused on the future. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Karen hadn't cheated, or if Eric hadn't gotten sick. But I'm learning to let those thoughts go and focus on the present. I'm not the same person I was 2 years ago. The pain and betrayal changed me, but I've learned a lot about myself, my resilience, and what I want in a partner and in life. To anyone going through something similar, it gets better. Take time to heal, surround yourself with supportive people, and don't be afraid to start over. You deserve happiness.